In 1861, a man on horseback was riding at full speed on the road out of Pingyao. He was Cheng Qingpan, the shopkeeper of Rishengchang, the first Chinese private bank. This man from Shanxi controlled the currency circulation in more than half of China. He was heading to Guangzhou to close down the local branch of Rishengchang. At that time, Guangzhou was an important commercial city in southern China with an advantageous geographical position and well-developed commerce. Rishengchang's branch in Guangzhou was doing well. So why did Chang suddenly decide to close it down? Ten years earlier, tens of thousands of farmers and handicraft workers wearing red headscarves had got together in a village in Guangxi province. They established a regime called the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom to confront the central government, and China fell into turmoil. Due to the deteriorating situation, many shops were closed down, and many merchants went bankrupt. China's economy was in great crisis. Private banks also faced unprecedented risks. To avoid being influenced by war, Cheng decided to close down the branches in Hangzhou, Nanjing, Changsha, and other places. However, the manager of the Guangzhou branch did not want to give up the chance of making profits. He still accepted customers' commission and remitted money to the branches earmarked for closure. But some branches were in the process of closing down and could not receive the money, while others did not have enough money to cash the drafts from the Guangzhou branch. The reputation of Rishengchang was badly undermined. Infuriated, Chang headed to Guangzhou. He fired the branch manager and dismissed the staff as quickly as possible. Rishengchang's branch in Guangzhou was closed down. Although many branches were closed down and Rishengchang's profits were reduced, Chang's decision helped reduce the risk in time of war. Rishengchang's strength was preserved for future development. When faced with war, managers of private banks often downsize the scale of their operation in order to protect themselves. In the mid-19th century, depending on their systems and their managers' wisdom, the private banks of Shanxi struggled to survive the social turbulence. But no one knew whether they could ultimately survive this financial disaster in China. By now, almost 40 years had passed since the establishment of Rishengchang. During this period, private banks mushroomed. Among them were 5 allied banks that were generally named Wei and Associates, established by Hou Yinqiang, a merchant from Shanxi. They were almost as large and as influential as Rishengchang itself. Beside the former site of Rishengchang's headquarters in Pingyao is the former site of one of the 5 called Weitaihao. Surprisingly, its internal layout was almost the same as that of Rishengchang. What's more, the rise of Wayne Associates was closely related to an internal conflict within Rishengchang. In 1826, Li Dachuan, the owner of Rishengchang, died of illness. At the end of his life, he transferred the running of Rishengchang to Lei Lu Tai and asked Lei to take good care of his 16-year-old son, Li Jianshi. In contrast to Li Dachuan, who was careful and modest, Li Jianshi longed to fully demonstrate his capabilities in controlling Rishengchang's operations. However, he did not expect that Lei would totally control the business of Rishengchang himself, and there was not much he could participate in. Like other shops in Shanxi, since their establishment, private banks had adopted the manager responsibility system. As the shopkeeper hired by the owner, Lei had the power to make the decisions about all business matters, including the use of funds, the establishment of institutions, operational policies, and regulations. The owner obtained the profits and bore the losses, and he would not overly interfere with the management.
一开始东家是自己经营，后来呢，发现他的这个意识到他的后代可能不行，那我与其留给我儿子，我不如雇一个那个懂经营的，来等于经营者来经营我这票号，我出资他经营。
Through the manager responsibility system, ownership and management power were kept separate, and the shopkeeper had the power to make decisions. But facing the powerful Lei, Li Jianshi felt he was underrated. He then noticed another person, the deputy shopkeeper of Rishengchang, Mao Honghui. Mao was once Lei's trusted subordinate. When he was not yet 20 years old, he was picked out by Lei and taken on as an apprentice. Several years later, he was promoted to vice manager. After the establishment of Rishengchang, Mao was appointed as the deputy shopkeeper by Lei. Lei assumed the overall responsibility, and Mao was responsible for the business. However, Mao did not have full confidence in Lei's leadership.
李履泰的年龄大了，60多岁，他年轻，他34岁。年龄大的人相对强调安全，比较稳健。年龄轻的人嘛，因为年龄轻嘛，这个胆气大，所以他强调一种相对的这个大踏步来发展。说双方在经营思路上有这个矛盾，这个有一个资料介绍，毛红会建议在哪发展分装这个李履泰不同意，能反出经营思路上有矛盾。 心中有想法。第一，他觉得这是老板让我回家的信号，不相信我了。第二，他猜测这毛红会在这当中做了手脚。
Lei did not say anything. He left the accountant's house and went home immediately. Several days later, Li went to visit Lei at his home. Unexpectedly, he found many letters addressed to various branches of Rishengchang on Lei's desk. These letters all had the same content, ordering branch managers to suspend business and prepare to return. This is the site of the most important office of Rishengchang, the Office of Letters. The names of places on the pockets stood for the branches of Rishengchang. Like other shops in Shanxi, Rishengchang made its headquarters the business and management center of all its branches. The shopkeeper at headquarters controlled the establishment of branches and the appointment of branch managers and staff. Li felt rather confused when he saw all the letters. Lei explained to him casually that, while the headquarters belonged to the Li family, the branches were arranged by him. He explained that now Li wanted to appoint a new shopkeeper. He had asked the branch managers to return so that the new shopkeeper could appoint new managers.
紧密的大掌柜雷利泰少少用了一个手腕，就使得东家明白了，离开雷利泰这人身上票就不行。
If all branch managers were replaced at the same time, Rishengchang would have to suspend business. The owner would not be able to bear such a great loss. Li apologized to Lei and begged him to take charge of Rishengchang again. In the end, he even fired his ally, deputy shopkeeper Mao Honghui. Having been fired from Rishengchang, Mao was frustrated. He did not expect that any opportunities would come his way in the future. Then a tycoon with the family name Ho extended an invitation to him. This site, in Jieshui County, Shanxi Province, belonged to the Hos, one of the most famous merchants in Shanxi in the Qing dynasty. The Hos made their fortune by selling silk and satin and had many shops. Seeing how much wealth Rishengchang was bringing to the Li family, Ho Rishengchang, the head of the whole family, was biding his time, waiting for a good opportunity to start his own bank.
他都是平遥人啊，给这个李家住的也不远，看别人转行以后大把的赚钱，他也想啊。但想，第一，人家怎么运营了，他要了解清楚；二，他有人啊，他一心想挖个人来，正好给他创造了条件，知道吧？双方闹矛盾了，然后他就把毛红会以很高的条件、很优厚的条件给挖来了。
3 years after the establishment of Rishengchang, a new bank opened up right next door called Piaohao. The owner of this new bank was Rishengchang. Mao was its shopkeeper. After he was hired as the shopkeeper, he finally got a chance to put his business idea of expansion into practice. In no time at all, Ho converted his 4 other shops into private banks. The whole family now operated 5 private banks, including Wei Tai Ho. They are called Wei and Associates. Mao was the top manager.
作为毛红会来讲，他非常看好票号的发展机会，票号的利润比商号那要有厚得多，啊，这到现在中国也这样吧？金融业挣钱的利润比实业要高得多吧？啊，第一，他看到机会好，他要迅速占领市场；第二，作为老板来讲呢，既然这个行业这么好啊，我过去的多种经营现在全改了，只懂就干这一个。啊，如果是一家，是不是有个垄断？是5家内部还有个竞争吧？5家内部既有竞争，同时还有联合，既能取得市场，还能对日生产形成很大的竞争。
This is the former site of Wei Tai Hao in Pingyao. In this compound, under the leadership of Mao, the 5 outlets had total assets of over 600,000 taels of silver and surpassed Rishengchang in assets. There was keen competition between them. To win this contest, Mao and Lei racked their brains in scheming. They used methods including increasing interest on deposits and reducing loan interest and remittance fees. They also improved internal management and tried to expand the scope of business. Because of the competition, the conflicts between the 2 old colleagues escalated. Lei gave his son Mao's name. Mao immediately fought back and gave his grandson Lei's name. Their contest lasted until 1849 when Lei passed away. Lei's successor as the shopkeeper of Rishengchang was Cheng Qingpan, who headed to Guangzhou to close the branch. After that, the relationship between Rishengchang and the Weis began to improve. Under Mao's management, Wei and Associates surpassed Rishengchang in terms of the number of branches and the operational scale. After the development of half a century, the banking business reached its peak. There were over 30 private banks in major Chinese towns. Every year, they allocated and transferred as much as 800 million taels of silver and controlled the circulation of financial capital in the whole of China. Private banks appeared even in Russia, Korea, Japan, and Southeast Asia. The scale, influence, and profits of private banks far exceeded other businesses. However, the peace did not last long. private banks would soon be caught up in a great crisis. How would their managers cope with this upheaval? One day in 1860, in Pingyao, many people gathered in the doorway of Piaohao with drafts in their hands. They were agitated and asked to withdraw their money immediately. Four years earlier, Britain had started the Second Opium War. British and French troops invaded Beijing and set fire to the old summer palace. The emperor had escaped to Chengde, 300 kilometers away. The government was beset with troubles both internally and externally, and was encountering financial problems. In the capital, theft and robbery were rampant. The economy slumped to the lowest point since the rebellion of the Taiping Army. When the message about the unrest in Beijing reached Shanxi, it caused a panic in many private banks. Wayne Associates decided to close down the branches in Beijing and 2 other cities. In a little over 10 days, 12 branches were closed, accounting for more than half of their branches outside Shanxi province. News about the closure made many shop owners uneasy. They put their savings in the private banks to earn interest. Now they worried that they would not get their money back, which had been invested in other places. So they were anxious to withdraw money. Mao felt this chaos was very difficult to handle. Such a large-scale bank run would cause serious cash flow problems. This would affect the performance of private banks as a whole, or even cause the whole family to go bankrupt. Mao had no choice but to pacify the customers. Meanwhile, he immediately sent someone to report to his boss, Ho, in Jieshui. When Mao was at the height of his troubles, Rishengchang also began the large-scale closure of its branches. For Cheng Qingpan, Lei's successor, the consequences caused by the closure of branches were also hard to bear. Many shops went bankrupt, and the loans could not be recovered. What's more, the southern part of China was caught up in the war, and people dared not do business there, so many branches of Rishengchang were closed, with the staff of these branches having returned to Shanxi to await orders. With a decrease in the number of branches, Rishengchang's profits were severely affected. They had to deal with the bad debts caused by the war and give severance pay to the laid-off workers. Rishengchang struggled to survive. According to the remaining account books, in 1860, Rishengchang's total revenue was 45,000 taels of silver, half of which were bad debts. Rishengchang was also required to distribute bonuses once every 4 years. The dividend per share reduced by half. To cope with the risks caused by the war, Rishengchang had to close some branches. So how would Wei and Associates cope with the large-scale run on the bank? The day after Mao's report arrived at the whole family compound, several carriages loaded with silver were dispatched to Weitaihao. Knowing that his banks were in trouble, Ho immediately called a meeting. The participants were the shopkeepers of the 5 associates. They decided to support Weitaihao and their silver reserves.
实际上要做出一种，给人一个印象。我有大量的货币资金，实实在在的，我库里没有空，这样的话能够造成一种社会舆论，稳定人心。人家有钱，不会骗我们，不提了，以后不会有啥问题的。这样绑得很严重的挤兑，可能一下就散了。
Through the joint efforts of the owner and managers of the 5 associates, the crisis, which had caused a run on the bank at Weitaihao, was averted. This showed the advantages of an alliance. When one was faced with a crisis, the other 4 tried their best to support it. So Weitaihao was able to head off the disaster. Apart from the alliance of the banks, what other factors helped Weitaihao solve these serious problems? The key factor was silver. If the owner did not have enough silver available at a given time, the customer's demands to withdraw the money they had deposited would not be satisfied. People would go into a panic, and Weitaihao would be destroyed by increasing numbers of uneasy customers. Ho was a shrewd merchant. Usually merchants spent part of their profits on estates and put the remaining profits back into the business. So why did Ho keep so much money with him? The bank managers created a pro-equity fund system, and this was the key factor that helped solve the problem.
因为票号它这个还款都是信用还款嘛，没有什么抵押物啊。所以是一旦这个商号，这个因为各种原因或者经营不善呀，或者其他什么原因，这个倒闭歇业了，肯定他这个贷款就收不回来了啊。这就票号就损失了啊。所以他为了这个弥补这个损失这一部分资金呢，所以在每期这个票号结账的时候，就到每一个账期结账的时候，他就从这个盈利里头，或者10%，或者是5%，就提出一部分这个资金来，专门这个专款专用这个储存到一边啊。
现在看来，相对我们的风险基金，就是说由营业中提取一部分利润，藏在这儿，一旦发生亏损啊，先由它来解决。
We do not know how much pro-equity fund Wei Tai-ho had at that time, but according to the books of another private bank, we can calculate the increase in its pro-equity fund. This is the site of a private bank in Shandong province. When it was established in the 1860s, its capital base was 60,000 taels of silver. By 1884, when it was reorganized, the capital base had increased to 120,000 taels of silver. In 1908, the capital had increased to 220,000 taels. The increase in pro-equity fund alone was 3 times more than the original capital. Thanks to the pro-equity fund, Wayne Associates were able to save a large amount of silver in peaceful times to guarantee an abundance of capital. With the help of the allied banks, Wei Tai-ho successfully solved the serious problems caused by the bank run. Soon after Wei Tai-ho's problems were solved, and before Mao was able to take a break, Tian Cheng-hung, another of the 5 associates, became embroiled in another crisis. In 1862, the rebellion of the Taiping Army in southern China had not yet been put down. More peasant uprisings followed. Shanxi and Ningxia were also caught up in the war. Northwest China was in chaos. Tian Cheng-hung's business was mainly in northwestern China. Due to the constant warfare, it was difficult for it to carry on business. It was on the verge of bankruptcy, which made the owner very anxious.
一个商号的倒账，并不仅仅意味着这个商号的倒闭关门，而且意味着所属财东的灭顶之灾。商号的亏损倒账，往往会使富甲一方的财东一夜之间一贫如洗。如果财东的商号倒账，信誉便一扫而光，以后再也不会有重整旗鼓的机会。
At the critical moment, the owner appointed a man called Ho Wangbin as the shopkeeper. This is Ho Wangbin's former residence in Pingyao. Ho Wangbin had worked in Wei & Associates for 10 years. He was a keen and wise manager. However, his mother was enfeebled by age and illness, as he had to leave and take care of his mother at home. Yet seeing his former boss in trouble, Ho accepted the mission at the critical moment. Through his efforts, Tian Cheng-hung rose miraculously again in just a few years. How did he save Tian Cheng-hung when it had been on the verge of bankruptcy? The key was his mobilization of capital. After careful research, Ho became familiar with the financial situations of all the branches. He found that some branches received a lot of cash, but there were not many merchants taking on loans. So he transferred the deposits made at these branches to the branches in urgent need of cash. In this way, he revitalized the capital and restored Tian Cheng-hung from the verge of bankruptcy to a profitable bank. In terms of capital management, mobilizing funds between branches and increasing lending and profits were the important measures taken by Shanxi merchants. In those difficult times, Ho made the best use of this method and helped Tian Qianheng avoid going bankrupt. In 1861, British and French troops withdrew from Beijing. The emperor returned to the Forbidden City. When the Qing government urged the private banks in Shanxi to restart their business in Beijing, Wei Changho, another of the five, suffered a misfortune. On the way back to Beijing, their carriages were robbed. All the silver was stolen. Even the account books were lost. Lei Shiwei, the manager of the Beijing branch, had no choice but to rewrite the account books day and night, based on what he could remember. Why were account books so important that Lei had to rewrite them from memory for days and nights on end?
票号的账簿比较多，它要方类核算，大体上有16种之多。比如说有万金账、流水账、老账、浮账、汇兑账、存款账、放款账、各地往来总账、帮扶往来总账等等。
There was a great variety of account books, and they were highly specific. This is the account book of general affairs. The expenses of articles for daily use were recorded in it. Even trivial matters like the purchase of Chinese pepper was recorded in detail. Through a complicated accounting system, private banks established a strict risk control system. Their business conditions were clear at a glance. Headquarters could better supervise the branches and control the business risks. If account books were lost, a bank would fall into disorder. There would be mistakes in money exchange. More seriously, the deficiency of information would influence the management strategy. After his hard work, over several days and nights, Lei rewrote all the account books from his remarkable memory. The workers of Wei Changho found that these account books, which had been rewritten by their manager, were all correct. From the bank run to the loss of the account books, Wayne Associates headed off all the disasters. What they relied on during this process were not only the advantages of a strong alliance and the strict regulations and systems, but also talented managers like Lei Shiwei. Isn't it a little strange that talented people like Mao Honghui and Lei Shiwei were attracted to the banking concept and worked so hard to make it a success? This is the list of shares of Wayne Associates, now displayed by a museum. It records the allocation of shares. Like many shops in Shanxi, the private banks also featured a stock holding system. The names represented the shareholders.
股份制的方法呢，一般来说，在一个家族内部由家族成员来持股，在这个商号下面还可能办小号，也可能携手亲戚朋友入股，甚至给他的员工、上层员工，比如说大掌柜呀、二掌柜呀、主要员工，也允许他们采入一部分股份。
The dividends paid to shareholders were recorded in this account book. Many of them were employees, including managers and assistants. They held different numbers of shares, ranging from a few % of a share to 1 complete share. They did not buy shares with money. Instead, they bought shares with the wisdom and labor they devoted to the banks.
经商对他的大掌柜、业务骨干，根据他们的劳动的质和量，给一定的股份，叫神股，可以与资本股一起参与利润分配。这种制度可以说类似现在西方企业的期股制度。
So what was the dividend per share at that time? This is a bonus list from 1883. The list shows that the dividend per share was 2,430 taels of silver. A branch manager would usually get 3% of a share. This means that he could get 729 taels of silver, almost equivalent to the annual salary of a county magistrate at that time. After Ho Yinchang, the owner of Wayne Associates, established his first bank, he gave Mao Honghui 1 generous labor share. As the business grew, he gave Mao another share. Mao was deeply moved. From then on, he put his heart and soul into the family business. This is the site of the Rishengchang private bank in today's Taigu County in Shanxi province. It could not be compared to Rishengchang or Wayne Associates in terms of capital and the scale of operation. Yet this small bank made an impressive impact. The invasion by British and French troops in 1860 caused a serious panic in the capital market. While other banks were busy packing up silver and transporting it to Shanxi as quickly as possible, Qi Mengbiao, the manager of the Beijing branch of Rishengchang, hid a large amount of silver in his own cabinet. Later, one of Qi's friends recorded Qi's behavior in his diary. Qi stayed in Beijing. He and his fellows swore to protect the huge sum of silver belonging to the customs office. They faced danger several times, but dealt with the dangers calmly and were not at all frightened. Qi worried that if they transported the silver back to Shanxi, they would be robbed on the way. So he hid the silver in the branch and protected it in person. Just as he expected, most banks that tried to transport their silver back to Shanxi were robbed on the way. He escaped that misfortune, and the customs office silver was well protected. Qi's behavior was highly praised. But we may wonder, as he faced the threat of death, what made him so valiant and fearless, apart from his faith and virtue. According to the system of private banks, after the managers and shopkeepers who held labor shares passed away, they still had the right to get a bonus for a certain time. This was called the inherit share.
当过总经理的，享有1股的这样的职工，可以享受8年的股股待遇，也就是红利待遇。如果没有当过总经理，但是身故也已经达到1股的，可以享受7年。如果有个别的有特别重大贡献的人员，这种享受股股的待遇还可以延长1期或者2个会计年度。
Everyone could be the boss. This promising and inviting system made all employees enthusiastic to take up a career in a private bank. The extent to which the private banks of Shanxi struggled to survive in turbulent times depended on the strictness of their control systems. The good faith of individual managers, and the judiciousness of his decision-making. In the 1870s, China enjoyed a short period of peace and development, and the springtime of private banks was still to come. New private banks mushroomed. Branches continued to develop. Orders were sent to many parts of the country through confidential letters. The merchants of Shanxi controlled an enormous network of financial exchange. While the Qing Empire was faced with both internal revolt and foreign invasion, private banks were going through a rapid growth. They even influenced the government's financial operations. What were the connections between them? Join us for the next part, Rapid Growth.